Hi everyone, Christina here. Welcome to day 13 of the holiday card series for 2016. Today I'm starting out with some dies from Waffle Flower Crafts. I'm using the Stitched Hearts and the Holiday Words dies. I'll also be adding a third die set from Waffle Flower in a minute here, but for now I thought I was just going to be using these two. So I'm going to be doing some stitching on felt. These dies can be used on paper or other textiles, and I decided that I would make kind of a more textured card today, and I would include some felt. So I'm using some felt from Papertrey Ink. I've had this felt for ages, and I'm just now getting around to using it. I've always wanted to use it more, so this is the perfect opportunity. So I'm also going to be cutting out some felt using the Pinking Rectangles, I think that's what it's called, from Waffle Flower. And I'm comparing these two dies in size, and I'm realizing that that rectangle needs to be just a little bit longer. So you'll see me, I'll walk you through the process of cutting it a little bit longer when it gets to the die cutting. So the first die cutting that I did was on the cream. I'm not sure what the color is called specifically, but to me it's just a cream color felt. And I'm running that through my Big Shot machine, and it's going to cut out all of those little circles, all the little dots that I will connect with stitching. So after I had that one completely cut out, I'm going to go ahead and switch to the green felt, and I'll be using that rectangle die. And I'm going to extend the length of this, and I'm going to do that by having it hang out the edge of my cutting pad out of the sandwich. And so it will only cut half of that rectangle, or just a little farther past half. So this is the way you would extend any size die cuts. You could do this with paper and cardstock as well. I just happen to be using felt today. So as you can see, it only cut one half. So I'm going to go ahead and put that die back down, and I'm going to extend it so it's a little bit longer and line up that pinking edge. And I'm going to turn the felt over, and you'll be able to see a little bit more how I lined that up. This is the same thing you would do if you were using cardstock, because you want to make sure that the line matches up. Now this die in particular has those little circle dots cut out for you, so it might not match up. In my case, it didn't match up. You might be able to see that later in the video, but it didn't matter so much because I was going to be stitching over that area in a straight line, and so you wouldn't even be able to tell that there were a mismatched row of dots. Also, because I'm going to be putting the heart shape on top, I knew it would be covered up, so I wasn't too worried. So those are the felt pieces. I'm going to go ahead and cut out the greeting. I'm using one of the dies from that set I showed you earlier, and this one says Merry Christmas. I love that particular die set because it has a ton of different holidays, and this is just the one for Christmas. So the way I like to prep for stitching felt pieces like this that have been die cut is I poke out all those holes with a craft pick. This is a Tim Holtz craft pick. You could also do this with your needle while you're stitching, but I like to do this because then I turn it over and I use some tape and pick up all of those little tiny dots of felt. This just prevents those little dots from going all over the place. And when I did this before, I discovered those dots on my cat's paws. I moved to the floor, and then the cats walked across it. So now I'm going to use some embroidery floss, and I'm just threading my needle here using this really pretty maroon color of thread. And I think I showed you the color on screen just a minute ago if you'd like to have this exact color. And I've double knotted the end, and then I'm going to do just a very simple back stitch on these three hearts that are kind of all nested together on this design. So like I said before, I'm doing a really simple back stitch, super easy. I'm just making sure that I have stitches connecting all of those little dots that I die cut with the die cut from Waffle Flower Crafts. And this took a little bit of time. It's definitely time consuming. I don't know that I would do a bunch of cards using these methods, but it definitely makes a very special card to send to someone special. So I think it's completely worth it. So after I stitched all those hearts, I moved on to the green piece, and I used this dark green embroidery floss, and the color I used was 319. And as you can see, any of the mismatched dot line, you can't even tell it's there because I just stitched right over it. I then used my shears to cut out the heart, and I very slowly and carefully cut out the heart, leaving just a little bit of a border around the stitched area. And I really love these scissors. They're not cheap, but they're perfect for any fabric or felt that you're going to be cutting out. I also used my craft pick to just punch out any of those areas on the Merry Christmas die, and you can see how it fits in that area perfectly. So now I'm going to work on the background for the card, and I thought it would be kind of fun and would kind of go with the homespun feel of all the stitching if I did my own plaid background. So I'm going to do a plaid background using my Mission Gold watercolor palette, and I'm only using one color. I'm using the color Sepia, and I've watered it down quite a bit so that it's very, very pale and very transparent and kind of anemic. There's hardly any color there at all. I want it to be very, very subtle in the background. I'm going to first paint on some diagonal stripes. These are all going to be fairly similar in size, and they're going to be about the same distance apart. Very, very simple. At first I thought I would just have a diagonal pattern in the background, but then decided I would make it into a full-on plaid. So I let that dry, or dried it with my heat tool, and then I'm going in the opposite direction, and this time I'm going to vary the widths and spacing on these lines. So you notice I'm just making that third line thicker, and then as I move along, these lines are going to get even more varied until I have a really thick area over on one side. I really love plaids that are like this, that are kind of a little bit random. So after you let this dry or use your heat tool, you'll be able to remove it from the board and move on with your card. I always use a heat tool because I am completely impatient and I just really like to keep things moving. So my card base is made out of some Neenah Solar White cardstock. This is the 110-pound version, and I've scored it at 5.5 to create a side-folding landscape card. So now I'm adding some adhesive onto the back of that watercolor piece, and I'm placing that down onto the front of the card base. The watercolor paper was cut to the exact size of my card, which is 5.5 by 4.25, so I didn't cut it down at all. I just adhered it straight down. To adhere the felt pieces together and also onto the card, I'm going to be using some of this tacky glue. I find that this is the best glue for adhering fabric or felt pieces to paper or to themselves. This very sticky glue works great for this. So I'll go ahead and place that down onto the card and press that down with my fingertips very lightly, and it dries fairly quickly. I'm going to do the same on the back of that heart piece that I stitched and cut out, just adding a little bit more in the center since it does kind of overhang the green shape. So I'll go ahead and press that down with my fingertips and make sure everything's nicely adhered. And then I'm going to take that Merry Christmas die cut, and I'm going to be gluing it down onto a darker piece of cardstock. The color I'm using today is Hot Fudge from My Favorite Things. And I'm doing this because I realized that over top of that heart, which was a cream color, it was a little bit hard to read the Merry Christmas. So I needed to back that with another color. So like I said before, this tacky glue is perfect for adhering paper to felt and also felt to felt. So I put that on the back of that die cut and then adhered it directly over the center of that heart and pressed down with my fingertips. So that is the card for today. This is a really simple card, a little bit time consuming, but very doable. I hope you guys will give it a try. And if you don't have felt on hand, you could definitely do all the felt pieces with cardstock or even pattern paper. I think that would look really, really pretty. So thanks so much for watching today's video. I will see you on Monday for day 14 of the holiday card series.